We've got some fun stuff for you tonight. So after a couple of days of practice where it was all no pads, relatively short, not a whole lot of team activity, but some flashes by a few people, it was really interesting today watching the new kickoff rules being practiced. So for those of you who haven't seen what it looked like in the XFL, it's going to be a little bit different in the NFL. But there's a reason Tank Dell is on the thumbnail. Tank Dell has taken reps as both a punt returner and a kick returner. I know some makes some of you nervous. Frankly, I'm in a state of denial about Tank Dell ever getting hurt again. I met I don't know if I yeah, I'm okay. I met his family today. I don't know if they would I don't know if I should share that or not. I just saw him after practice, and I got to tell you, they were as delightful as you would expect from the people who raised a young man as fine as Tank Dell. So I was really happy to meet them, and he looks so good out there. And when you see these kickoff returns, you're going to see like the level of violence and potential collisions is not the same as it used to be. So this is let me back this right up. So this is from the XFL. You're going to see off to the right, you've got the kicker there. And you're like, oh, where's the kickoff coverage? They're all the way up on the 35. In the NFL, they'll be on the 40. And then in the XFL here, they had the entire return team lined up 5 yards away from the kickoff team. In the NFL, they only have to have 7 guys, 7 of the offensive players on that line, which will actually be the 35. The defenders will be on the 40. And then the kicker kicks the ball. The defenders, if you're asking why the defenders aren't moving yet, it's because they're not allowed to move until the ball either hits the ground or a returner touches it. So you can start to see already, like all of a sudden across the board, you've got, instead of high speed collisions or guys trying to intercept people running at high speed, you've got guys almost like these offensive players. It's like they're gonna have to face a blitzing linebacker and pick them up in space. So the ball, it gets a little bit complex, but once you grasp it, it's relatively simple. The ball has to land inside between the goal line and the 20. If it rolls into the end zone, or if it's kicked into the end zone, then the offensive team can try to take it out. If they touch it back, they started on the 20. If they kick it through the end zone, don't hold me to the specific rules here. But basically, like, it's a normal old school touchback. But if they don't get it into this landing zone there between the goal line and the 20, then the ball starts on the 40. So today they're fielding these kicks. We'll just see the way it plays out. You know, it looks like it's safer than the old high school collision wedge bust stuff. The not a high school, but everything else. But the balls that the returners were fielding and the guys that returned today were Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Desmond King, Damian Pierce, Steven Sims, Robert Woods, Jawar Jordan, John Mechie, Miles Bryant, and J.J. Taylor. So you've got running backs, you've got defensive backs, you've got wide receivers. And DeMeco talked about how they're just going to look for guys that they think might have the potential to break plays. And I think lots of guys might get opportunities throughout the season. I got really excited just watching them, even as they're not lining up and going full speed or anything. The drill was unlike a drill I'd ever seen in football. In my many decades of playing and watching football, I'd never seen anything like that. Obviously I'd watched the XFL, but I hadn't seen it being practiced and everything. And there's just a bunch of different dynamics here. Tank Dell has been taking those reps. I'm cool with him. I think Sean Pendergast put up a Pender poll about this, whether you're cool, you as the fans are cool with Tank Dell returning kicks, or if you'd rather just see him just be used strictly as a wide receiver, keep him as healthy as possible. I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse of the fan base, and I think most people are into it, at least right now. We'll go over what I saw at camp today, and then I want to watch Tank Dell's press conference. And if I get to it, we'll get to some of the other guys that had press conferences today. Let's see. Good job on moving the chains. Oh, yeah, I was on Sirius yesterday. Thank you. Sheesh. Yeah, I know. Okay. I assume you're saying sheesh about all the rules. Trust me, if you just watch it a few times, it starts to make some sense. NFL.com has a video on there. Dude, are you still in the studio? Been drinking since 3. No, I left the studio, then I came back. And I got all the vegetables out of my teeth for today's live stream. You guys will all be happy to know. I did not have a good day technologically. I'm going to tell you what, this cloud strike BS, how the hell does a cybersecurity company hack its own self? I would have been happier. And how the hell does a cybersecurity company have a name like CloudStrike? I had no time this morning. I knew that there were some kind of computer issues. I had a family member that was stuck because they were on a United or a Delta flight. And all I hear was that, yeah, it's a cloud strike. It's a cloud strike. So instantly, obviously, it's either the Russians or the Chinese. And I went through the whole morning, not digging any deeper into it than looking at the headline until I found out that the reason I couldn't use my eFax, I'm guessing, was because of CloudStrike. If we go to training camp, what's the best time to say hi? I will try to post that. I will let you know. It's hard to keep me pinned down to one place. All right. I'm going to take some more of the questions and comments in a little bit, but my takes from training camp were, again, not a whole lot going on, and I always hesitate to really say somebody's struggling or not after the first 2 days of camp, especially the rookies, because there's an adjustment period. But just in terms of some of the guys that flashed, some of the guys that maybe you want to watch and see how it all plays out. We talked about the kickoff returners already. Dameon Pierce, for the second day, looked really good. It's a running back, and I'm the first person to tell everybody, you can't tell much about running backs, but in training camp with no pads on. But what we were looking for with Dameon Pierce is, okay, has he gotten himself comfortable in the system to the point where he can be really decisive, put his foot in the ground and go? And he did it again today. Today, his big play was more of a clear path. I think it was an outside zone, and he just had a wide lane. Then Jarrett Patterson had a nice block downfield for him. Dameon looked very decisive in reading off of that. Yesterday's play where he cut back on an outside zone run, that's what he struggled with last year. He looked seamless. He looked decisive. So far, so good with Dameon. And I don't know a single Texans fan that isn't rooting for Dameon Pierce, not just because right now he's your backup running back, but because he's Dameon freaking Pierce. Jawar Jordan, the 6th round pick, the running back. There's something to him. The only concern with him is his size, but he had another day today where once on a reception, once on a run, just looked very explosive. He kind of just looks like he bides his time. I don't want to say Le'Veon Bell. He's different than Le'Veon Bell, but like a diminutive Derrick Henry almost, just kind of bides his time and then like one of those, what are the Harrier jets? Those Marine jets that can rise vertically and then take off. You know how when they're in that transition phase, they don't start off real fast, but then all of a sudden, like that. So he's the Harrier jet. Tim Boyle had a check down. I'm going to read this. This must have been, I think this was John Harris. Yeah. Tim Boyle checked down a throw to running back Jawar Jordan out in the left flat. The rookie caught the pass and sprinted up the sideline right in front of me. A couple of defenders redirected towards Jordan and eventually got near him. Then this is another thing that flashed when I was watching Jawar Jordan. And John does a great job. Go to HoustonTexans.com or go to his X.com and see his notes every day. All of a sudden, I see this massive human being chasing Jawar Jordan 30 yards down the field. I look up, and it's D lineman McTelvin Agim, sprinting from his spot on the DL to tag off on Jordan all the way down on the field. The defensive line has been fun to watch, and they're doing a lot of stuff without pads where they're running a lot of games, twists and stunts and everything. And it's good work for the offensive line because it's mental work, but, without that level of physicality. But, man, it's hard not to just appreciate the value of competition with these defensive linemen because there's so many guys out there. They're the big names at the edge spots. And, of course, we know DeMeco Autry and Mario Edwards can go down inside. But all the other guys, and I don't even want to list them all off because I keep screwing guys over and not mentioning guys that I want to. Although I will say Kurt Heinisch does look like he might be responding to the competition. He's never looked all that fluidly athletic, and he looks like he might have a little bit more to him. If we go to the other side of the ball, Tunsil's not playing. He had a knee scope in the offseason, so they're easing him back in, and he's also, as CJ called him, super vet. They're gonna bide their time with him and let him go in nice and easy. Blake Fisher's been working with the ones. And again, no pads. That's when you can really see what takes hold. But so far, I think he's looked pretty comfortable. I would say the offensive line, just like the defensive backs, have some really stiff competition they're going up against. So, I mean, when I look at guys out there like Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, like the various guys on that defense, the offense is going to lose some reps here and there, and likewise, the defensive backs are going to lose some reps. I think when John Mechie has been winning, it's rarely that I look at it and think like, oh, that defensive back was awful on that. It's more often that John Mechie just looks, I think, really good. I'm bouncing around all over the place. I got excited again. I told my wife after the first day of training camp, she listened to the morning show. She said, Seth, you sounded like you do when you get a little hyper. You were talking real fast and you didn't stop. And so I calmed myself down this morning. I'm going to calm myself down a little bit for now. But the offensive line. So Titus Howard looks fine at right tackle. Kenyon Green, I'm trying to be careful about this. Like, I don't want to get overly excited until I see him play actual football. But he had transformed his body. He looks like a more leaner adult offensive lineman now instead of kind of a big puffy teenager. And you just don't know if that's going to translate athletically. He looks good. Like I would say when they're just doing O-line drills and everything, and they're working out in space, I think he looks more athletic than most of the other interior offensive linemen. So far, so good with him. Juice Scruggs, without the physicality, I haven't seen anything to worry about, but I haven't seen anything I'm going to overly gush about either. And so you end up potentially with an improved offensive line. And again, Jarrett Patterson has shown good movement and athleticism. There's so much more competition out there on a position by position basis than I've ever seen before. It's so nice to see. They just have so many guys that flash potential that are backups. And it doesn't feel like in 2021 and 2022. So when I say more than I've ever seen before, I mean since, the dark days and really maybe going back to no, I don't think no. Brian's teams were never all that deep, I guess. It's got just the potential to be really, really deep. Christian Harris has not been out there. The people I asked about it just seem to I can kind of read the body language and guys that aren't going to BS me, the guys from the team that I ask about. I don't think it's a big deal. At this point in the season, I don't think they feel the need to say that it's either, a personal issue or anything like that. But I mean, up until like one day before training camp, Christian Harris did an interview with somebody and sounded like nothing but positive and ready to go. So maybe I have zero clue. I have zero clue other than that I know when I asked people from the Texans, they really didn't seem like it was anything to be concerned about. Maybe it's storm damage. I have zero clue. But I'm not concerned about that right this moment. So Henry To'oTo'o has been playing in place of him. Jake Hansen's been out there somewhere in some ways. And again, hard with those front seven guys to judge too much. So I haven't seen anything to be concerned about. I think To'oTo'o is moving around pretty well. But Azeez Alshire, I mean, he plays the way that DeMeco Ryans used to play, like sideline to sideline with no seatbelt. He's all over the place. So, and he's a very good leader, talking to the young guys all the time. That's been really nice to see. No pads, but man, like the guy didn't get paid and then decided just start phoning it in. He looks good. Davis Mills had a nice throw to John Mechie. And John Mechie keeps showing up. Xavier Hutchinson keeps making nice plays. Noah Brown, I feel bad for Noah Brown because just because of his age and the team that he came on to, he might be one of the most under-discussed dude who had over 300 yards receiving in a two-week period last year. I think the thing about Noah Brown is that he is very savvy at figuring out the soft spots in the coverage. And he's one of those guys that, all right, yeah, if you lined him out to be the X and expected him to be the man, that's not an ideal situation. But there's something to be said for a guy that's, a sizable wide receiver and plenty athletic enough, but really knows how to slip into those seams in the coverage. So the competition at wide receiver, it's going to be fierce. It's going to be fierce. Kickoff return is going to come down to a lot of it, I think. And then the kickoff return, as we discussed, they've got different types of guys on the coverage team, on the return team. The returners are wide receivers, running backs, defensive backs. They are just wide open to figuring out how this thing's going to work out. And I don't think it's going to be bad. I don't think it's going to be one of these things where like, oh my God, I can't, like, league wide. I don't think people are going to be grousing about it. It's going to be new. People don't like new things. They tend to chafe against it. But there's going to be some big plays off of this. And as soon as your team scores a touchdown on this, you'll be happy about it. So in week 1, there will be at least one team that scores a touchdown, and they'll think it's an awesome new rule, and their opponent will think it's the dumbest rule ever, unless the opponent wins, and then like maybe grudgingly give it some credit. The cornerbacks. Let me take a couple questions, and then we'll get to Tank Dell's press conference in a little bit. We should trade for Ayuk. I know. For those of you who don't know what the engineer is talking about, I threw a chair the other morning because I suggested that they could trade for Ayuk, and Sean said that didn't seem like it was a smart thing to do. So I asked him why did he not want the Texans to win? Why does he hate the Texans? No, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I tried to make a case for it, and it just doesn't. I workshopped it. Haven't been this excited for a football season in years. I haven't been this excited. I saw somebody the other day say that they were excited in 2020. And I don't know about that, man. I think a lot of people talk themselves into a lot of the, let's call them bold moves that Bill O'Brien had made. And well, I got to be honest with myself. I'll go back and review my own tweets from the time and my show notes and everything. You still did have Deshaun Watson after all. And Deshaun Watson, who did sign a contract going into that season. But by the way, remember that somebody the other day was asking whether we should worry about next year, 2 years in the future, 2 seasons in the future, if David Mulligetta would be too hard to deal with in signing a contract with CJ Stroud. Remember that it was David Mulligetta who re-upped Deshaun Watson. Nobody had a single clue or prediction that what would unfold. But I'm not overly worried about David Mulligetta and his influence. Remember, a lot of people thought that there's no way the Texans would have drafted CJ Stroud because David Mulligetta. He keeps defying the odds, this Mulligetta fella. Getting Aziz as a leader for the defense is huge. Yeah, I think just like with a DeMeco Ryans or a Brian Cushing or somebody who's really old school in the way he takes it seriously. You know, he takes his job as the field general really seriously, and then he plays in such a way that he backs it up. Yeah, still come back to the DT concern. Our pass D suffered last year, but we stopped the run. If we regress stopping the run, our secondary will have to take steps forward. You know what I'd say, James, is that look, as much as I like both those guys, and I think Sheldon Rankins and Malik Collins were a bit underrated in some ways, it wasn't their forte stopping the run. When you look at like Tim Settle is a wide ass dude. Like wide ass. Yes. I mean, I meant like the expression wide ass, but just huge, broad shoulders. But he's got a little bit of wiggle to him too. And just by sheer the physics of it, sometimes having big bodies in there matters. You know, when Khalil Davis was in the game, there was a difference just in that he's a bigger body and he's not gigantic. And Khalil Davis did some good things, but there's a certain stoutness that comes with just having bigger bodies on the field. And they've got the ability to platoon those guys with the Denico Autry's, the Mario Edwards, the pass rushers. I mean, every single one of those defensive ends can go down on the rush on the inside at times. I'm not as concerned about it because you got actual viable NFL players. I was talking to John Harris about it today, and I think at the defensive tackle position especially, this is the first time I can ever remember where you've got I feel like there's at least 6 guys who are bona fide NFL players. They might not be bona fide starters on every team in the league, but they're bona fide guys that if they get released are going to get picked up by another team. And those guys are vying for 3 or 4 spots at defensive tackle. because with all the defensive ends they have that can play inside, I don't know exactly what the roster composition is going to look like. But if you've got 6 or 7 guys that could all be on NFL rosters somewhere as just bona fide regular season players, the level of competition that compounds day after day with the way those guys are out there moving, I'm cautiously optimistic about it right now. But it's a very valid concern. I don't mean to diminish it. Not trying to be all Pollyanna here. I don't actually know what that word means. I just hear people say it all the time. Okay, the cornerbacks. Let's get to the cornerbacks. I promised that before I got diverted by myself in Cloud Strike. So, Kamari Lassiter. This is the thing with Kamari Lassiter. I think he's looked really good at times. I think that there's other times though when he's playing next to, or playing a rep ahead of and then a rep behind of Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson, you can see the difference in just pure unadulterated athleticism. Henderson and Okudah, they were drafted in the top 10 for a reason, and they have like an extreme level of athleticism. Now, they've all been to they've been to 4 different teams amongst 2 of them. So it's not like they've been able to tie it all together. Lassiter is a guy that I'm going to be very, very patient with, because it's not like he's like too unathletic to play in the NFL, but his football smarts and his instincts and everything else like that is one of the things that they hope to be his calling card. And it's going to take a little while for a guy like that to come along. So I'm not like overly concerned about it. Today, he got beat by Robert Woods by, I'd say, a couple yards or so. Robert Woods created some real separation, like to the point where you don't want to have to be, you don't have to be a team that can't play cover 0 because your cornerback can't cover Robert Woods. But I'm not just trying to, turn a negative into a positive for the sake of just doing that. I'm going to be very, very patient with him, because these first couple days of camp, these first couple weeks of camp, all through training camp on into the first 2 regular season games, these rookies, they're thinking, and it slows them down. It takes time. I mean, remember Kareem Jackson was an abject bust after his first year in everybody's eyes, and then he came along and ended up being a very good cornerback who ended up transitioning into safety, played forever in the league. So it's not anything I'm panicking about, but when you hear people talk about it, just take it with a grain of salt, but know that they're not just trying to, trump something up. I think they're definitively reporting on what they saw at practice. But it is a very real thing. Rookies sometimes, when they're thinking their way through things, they're going to move a little bit slower, especially the guys who are conscientious. So I have seen instances of heady play. I've seen instances of athletic play. But then you look at like Okudah today. Okudah made a really nice pass breakup, and both those guys are longer than I expected and can just move extremely well. It's just a matter of, all right, they've also been let go of or let walk away by 2 other football teams between them each, two teams each. Even before the Watson entanglement, I never felt as attached to the team as now with Stroud. I think some of that is, Bill O'Brien was just a bad fit for the city in a lot of ways. There's still, he's a consummate Northeastern guy. Some people can be chameleons and change with the times and recognize there's the better way of living when they move to Houston. And you can slow things down a little bit, and you don't have to be such an a-hole about every little thing. Sometimes. Sometimes people figure that out, like myself. But I think O'Brien is so Massachusetts or Connecticut or wherever the hell he's from that I just don't think you can take it out of him. And there was part of it that was just a never a fit with the city. Like on a personality basis, if you could have taken, no, I can't take, I can't take Cully. I could take Lovey for sure. I mean, Lovey's pure Texas, maybe a younger Lovey Smith back in the day or whatever. That would have been a perfect fit. Cully, man, he's such a good dude. Man, he got paid. I'm not going to cry for him. How do the guys behind the cornerbacks look out there? Any standouts? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I will say that Bullock, I think Bullock's shown some good stuff. He's blitzed a couple times where I'm like, whoa, he covered ground. Like and this is important. He stayed deep and then timed it right instead of getting all antsy like a rookie and getting up and letting the quarterback know that you're blitzing. He timed it pretty well, almost to the point where I was like, wow, he's pretty deep, and then just got into the backfield. I think it was CJ got rid of the ball, but he's done some good stuff. And I think John Harris was real positive on him. Let me find John Harris's quote because John's very good at watching the defensive backs. Okay, Kalen Bullock. Oh, this was Cody, actually. Rookie safety, Kalen Bullock flashed in the second workout. He came screaming through the line on a blitz. He might have been a second or two late. He was so deep, but he certainly helped force a quick decision. It won't be easy for him to get on the field if the veterans stay healthy ahead of him, but having the time to settle into the NFL defense and understand how he can make his 10 teammates correct will be good for him. Cody also mentioned, makes you kind of wonder, all right, if Bullock can be that true center field safety, does it free up Petrie to perhaps be more of a box player and do some of the things a little bit more creatively if you're not stuck with Jalen? I don't want to, because he's plenty athletic enough to do that, but I think he's just got such a zest for contact and just like psychologically, I don't know if deep safety is where he's always going to be best. So if you can use him creatively and he can come along and play deep as much as you need to, that might be it. Cade Stover, I've seen some good stuff out of him. I've seen him come open. It's funny when I try not to, there's just so much to take in. You don't have the benefit of replay or rewind or anything like that. So a lot of times I end up watching guys when they're not targeted, and it's hard to tell exactly, all right, did he get open because the defensive back or the linebacker saw where the play was going, or did he genuinely get open? But I've seen him get open a good amount, including times when he's not targeted. So I think the relationship with CJ is real. He's works his butt off. Like you don't have to worry about that. So as we start getting into padded stuff and combined practices and everything, I think there's a very good chance that they're not going to shy away from using him. You know what I should do? Before I go to Tank Dell, I want to look at the depth. Let me look at the rookies. And, the big thing is always trust with your rookies. There's plenty of guys that are athletic enough and play football well enough in terms of making plays, but coaches just can't trust them because they're making too many mental errors. And so far, I haven't really seen reason for concern. This coaching staff is not really chock full of yellers and screamers, which I like. Except that as an observer, sometimes it's nice when a coach will just be tearing into somebody, because then you can tell, like, oh yeah, that was definitely him on that route. Was it the safety or the corner? Well, I don't know. The corner's crying because the coach tore into him so hard, so I guess it was the corner. But none of these guys are going to do that. DeMeco won't allow it, which is good. Blake Fisher, I think picking up games and blitzes, I think he's looked adequate so far. I think he looks like he belongs. He doesn't look out of place. Cade Stover, as we just discussed. Jawar Jordan has really flashed at times. Jawar Jordan, the running back. The big question with him is he's a smaller guy, and that'll be his challenge. Just like with Tank Dell last year, like, okay, man, he looks good, but I don't know until I see him out there in the NFL. And, Tank last year, there were times when, for a smaller guy, challenge in the NFL is going to be, okay, how you going to get off of press coverage? And there'd be times where, man, he was on the ground at the snap. And there were a few times last year during camp, early on in camp, where I was watching somebody else and I'd look over right after the snap and Tank was on the ground, and he got better. Obviously, he figured it out and he worked on his releases and everything, and he overcame that challenge pretty quickly. So Jawar Jordan is definitely a guy to watch. Marcus Harris has flashed his athleticism, no pads, but I mean, he's sometimes with rookies, especially the linemen, you worry about how did they handle their time off. Marcus Harris looks like he was eating like horse steroids and twigs and leaves and stuff. He's very fit, just very lean and stout. He's not a heavy guy, but he gets across the line of scrimmage really quickly. Janky, I haven't really paid too much attention or noticed anything out of, so I can't really talk. I gotta look for Jamal Hill more. I really haven't. I haven't been looking at those guys that much. Let's see, who am I missing? Solomon Bird, I need to watch him. So again, none of that means that a guy is good or bad. It's just there's so many guys to watch out there. So, but so far it looks like look good dudes, no jackasses that I can tell. We'll figure that out. So let's watch some Tank Dell. No more comments. What do you think? Who's DeMeco most excited to see in pads? That's a really good question. Let me think about that. Let me let my subconscious think about that while we watch Tank Dell. This is his presser. I have not watched any of this today. Tank Dell, I felt bad because his parents were there, and I don't know if they're there every day or not. I just knew that I happened to run into them and chat with them for a little bit today. But it was Tank Dell's media day, so he had to do the press conference, and then he went over and did an interview on Sports Radio 610, which I'm sure you can find on YouTube. So let's see. Let's present Tank Dell. God, I love Tank Dell. That's what I should have told his parents, is that I'm jealous that he's their child. I want him to.
Football season's finally here. What is it to just break the huddle, be around the guys?
Let me know if you guys can't hear that. Please don't lie, because it'll throw me into flummox with the cloud strike and whatnot.
Just see it all kind of come out there with
it's very fun. You know, just what I've been waiting on since I got injured back in December. So just to go out there and just be around the team again. You know, I was around the team at OTAs, but this training camp, so it's different. It's something special going on. So it's very special for sure.
It's special.
You going into year two?
You know one thing, Tank, he said in his press conference during OTAs or minicamp, he kind of like he's very polite about it, but I think he was just trying to say, I don't want to give a bunch of emotional speeches every time I get up here about my injuries and my gunshot, my through and through.
Being able to have, you missed part of last season. What's different?
So I think the question was just what's different this time this year.
I feel like just knowledge of the game, knowledge of the playbook, things like that. You know, I could play like slower. You know, people think I should play faster, but you know, I feel like I could play slower at my own pace now because I know like what's going on. I know the in and out. So the playbook, like I said, that was a key important part of just everything. That everything was just moving fast a little bit at the beginning of the year, but then it kind of slowed down. But now I just feel like I'm back in college again. You know, of course it's a different competition level, but I just feel like I'm back at college now. So.
Yeah, it's discomfort. It's discomfort when you're a young guy and there's so many things going on. And, you know, NFL defenses just do a much better job of showing you what you want to see and then taking away and everything. And so even when you make the right decision, in the back of your mind, you're second guessing it a little bit because you've been duped. You've been hit upside the head already so many times your rookie season. So, so a faster Tank Dell. Because he feels more comfortable going slow.
What's your view of the new kickoff rules?
So what's your view of the new kickoff rules?
I don't really have a view on it. I have to really we got to go out there and have a couple games so I can see how I feel back there. But to be honest, I like it better the old way. Like them coming from a father, so I can see what I want to do. But it's cool for right now.
Yeah, that's a good point too. For the wide receivers and the guys who have been returners in their football careers at any point, that is true. Like you get a clearer vision of it. That's why I think the running backs are probably really going to be the ones who thrive in this because it's a murky picture with this new kickoff return.
Are you ready for added special teams load in addition to your wide receiver work?
Am I ready? I'm ready for everything. You know.
Yeah.
Of course I'm ready. Yeah.
What's been the continuity between you, Stephon, and Nico these last few days? Seems like you guys spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, man. You know.
I wasn't paying. Sorry. I did what I do to Sean sometimes. I wasn't paying attention.
Teams loaded in addition to your wide receiver work?
Am I ready? I'm ready for everything. You know. Of course I'm ready. Yeah.
What's been the continuity between you, Stephon, and Nico these last few days? Seems like you guys spent a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the continuity like between you and Stephon and Nico?
Yeah, man. You know, we just all like picking each other brains. You know, we all know what we're capable of. We all know what the outside world is saying about just us, but it's not only about us. You know, we still have John Mechie, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, Hutch, Jay Wayne. We got a lot of pieces, Steve Sims. We got a lot of pieces still in the receiver room, but we know like everybody can around us three, but you know, we ready to go put on the show for sure.
Okay, so the one thing, and I know a lot of you have heard this, but if you haven't, you're gonna hear it. You're gonna hear it now, and the rest of you can hear it again. The first day, especially, Tank was just attached to Stephon Diggs, and Stephon, like, not in a kid brother tagging along type of way. Just Diggs was really working with him on like at one point during the punt return period when Tank wasn't fielding punts, he was working with Stephon Diggs, and Stephon was working with him on a double move. He was moving in a way that I'm not capable of really moving because a combination of neck trauma and whiteness, I can't do it. But it was really good. And in that practice, Tank nailed somebody hard with a double move.
A five-headed monster on this offense. That one of those monsters includes Joe Mixon. What type of element does he add to this offense?
What kind of an element does Joe Mixon add to this offense?
Yeah, Joe Mixon gonna make him respect the run game. Our O-line gonna do their job. The receivers gonna do their job blocking. Joe Mixon got like that's gonna help the receivers get open. Like people say, you know, receivers help running backs get open. Running backs help receivers get open. Man, if he running the ball well, we can throw the ball well. We're throwing the ball well, he can run the ball well. So it's just a hand-to-hand thing. So he's gonna bring a good element.
Yeah, the thing about Joe Mixon is just simply that the Bengals last year had transitioned into a team that ran gun more than anybody else in the league. So they were running out of gun a lot. And Joe is more suited to, if you've seen any of the pictures of him from camp, he is a hoss. He is a thick dude. But he's more suited to, and I think most valuable when the quarterback's under center and you're just hitting it. And that's the stuff that really does a good job setting up play action. So, I mean, if Damian really has a better feel for this offense this year, Damian obviously is that same type of hoss. And then Jawar Jordan is just a rocket, not to mention Agumbawale and the other guys, British Brooks out there. There's competition there, but Damian, I'm just really hopeful for. Mixon's going to be fine. And then Jawar Jordan's just it could be potentially something. He's got some really nice traits. We just got to see it.
There's a lot of people that are talking about, you know, who's going to be the number one wide receiver on this team. But you told me last season that CJ can make anybody a number one wide receiver. Is that just the unselfishness about him?
Yeah.
So just asked about, you know, all the questions about sharing mouths to feed, all that stuff.
Definitely. With that, I just feel like, first off, CJ was in college with like 5 number one receivers in the league right now. So it's like we know what it come with. We know what CJ capable of. We know what Coach Slowick capable of. He's going to call the plays for everybody to dial it up. And I just feel like with that, you know, it's going to be like everybody going to have games. I feel like one game he might be hot, or next game he hot. This game, both of them might be hot. You never know. So it's just we got so many monsters, like CJ said, 5-headed monsters that we could just come at people like in different ways.
I guess, yeah, the one thing that kind of stinks about that is there were no problems with guys complaining about sharing the ball or anything at Ohio State. But I guess, you know, you could still look so good despite having multiple other wide receivers on your team that you end up getting drafted by a team like the Jets and languishing in whatever the hell's going on there. I'm not bashing the Jets. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they'll be just fine. But other than that, I would have rather it might work out better for Tank Dell in terms of just how much success he tastes early on in his career, having gone to the University of Houston instead of Ohio State. Why'd you freeze on me? I think he said, have you seen growth from CJ in terms of how he looked year one to now?
Leadership, you saying? It's been, like I said, it's really hard to tell, to be honest, because last year CJ was a great leader. Even though he was a rookie, he was a great leader. And this year he's the same. Like, he's the same guy every day. Come in and want to lead by example first off, and then he's gonna tell others to like pick it up. Like, he'll tell me to talk to the receivers, Diggs talk to the receivers, Nico, anybody. Like, he just want everybody to leader. And I feel like he's a special leader for sure.
You know, CJ mentioned that in his press conference yesterday, that he genuinely didn't know whether he was going to be the starter until right before week 1. And because, you know, everybody always speculates about whether or not it's an actual or a real quarterback competition or anything. And you know, who knows at the root of it all how much of an actual competition it was. But I think the important thing is that CJ felt like it was a competition. And he mentioned that as a difference between last year and this year. It's that he's looked at as a leader right from the onset. You know, so from the very beginning, he's going to be more comfortable stepping up and pointing out when things are wrong, you know, correcting guys and everything. I think he's probably he's going to have much more confidence and comfort in correcting veterans now than he would have been before. So, yeah, that's obviously a good thing.
Do you feel like, what way do you feel like Stephon Diggs is getting back to perhaps the younger receivers?
Say that again. I'm sorry. You got to flop him.
Started on him. Hey, in what way do you feel like Stephon Diggs is perhaps maybe giving back to you and Nico and John Mechie and maybe showing leadership?
Yeah, I feel like just the things he say, you know, we pick his brain a lot, especially me and Mitch. Like, we always ask him questions, or we don't even have to ask questions. Like, he'll just come up and just start talking about stuff, like talk about stuff that he's seen, like when he was at the Vikings, or he's seen when he was in Buffalo, and he's just giving us game. He give us free game all the time, man. That's all he do. Like, he want us to be great. He know what we capable of, so, and he know we got a long career ahead of ourselves. So he's just telling us like what we should expect and how to move and things like that.
He gives us free game. All right, I gotta put that in the old guy trying to sound like he's younger. I'm gonna use that on the show at some point next week. Tell Sean I'm giving him free game.
Just so far in practice, but what are your early impressions of Kamari Lassiter at cornerback?
What are your early impressions of Kamari Lassiter at cornerback?
I love him, man. He's a dog, and I know he gets even better when he put on pads. You know, I was watching his tape a minute ago, and when we drafted him, I watched his tape, and he's a dog, especially when he got on his pads and stuff like that. So just ready for that to come. But I love him, man. He's a great hard worker, so he's good.
So if you just joined the live stream, we talked about Kamari Lassiter a little bit earlier, and that one of the things that, you know, is apparent is that he's playing next to Okudah and Henderson a lot. And when you see those guys, like, those guys have those super athletic traits that got them drafted in the top 5. So he's not that type of athlete. I think it was a really good point by Tank, is that you got to wait until the pads come on and see that, because that's one of my old pet peeves about training camp, is that, man, and especially OTAs and minicamp, when you're in no pads, it lies. Like, minicamp lies to you. OTAs lie to you. The first couple days of training camp lie, because it really favors just pure athleticism when the physicality isn't there. With Kamari Lassiter, that's one of the things, is that he's willing to come up and hit hard. He's, by college standards, he's really good at recognizing route patterns and things like that. So you can't really see the total package of what Kamari Lassiter is until things get a little bit more physical. There's a player, the very first year of the Texans in 2002. The guy's name was Dorian Boose. I told this on the morning show for some of you, so I'll tell it again. Dorian Boose, who's a great guy. He's since passed away. Just an awesome guy, but he was incredibly athletic. And like, through mini camps and the first couple days of training camp, when we were looking around like, why the hell did the Jets let this guy go? What the hell? And then the pads came on, and you could see he just wasn't a physical enough player. So he never really lived up to his athleticism. Whereas there's other guys that I think even the coaches start to talk themselves out of. Like, I myself, because I wasn't a super athletic guy, I was more of a physical guy. Like, I could tell sometimes when, like, there was some young rookie that was super athletic or something, and the coaches started thinking, they give you that eye, you know, and like, they start thinking like, what about this kid? Then the pads come on, and the men separate themselves from the boys. Sons of bitches.
Tank, how important was it for you to get out this offseason and work with Delphonte, and as far as with the other wide receivers, that you were able to pick their brains, but they were also able to pick your brain?
Yeah, it was great. You know, I was ready to work with Delphonte in January. I got hurt December, bro, but I couldn't do it.
So Delphonte is the footwork king, right, on Instagram? The guy that, you see a lot of these videos, they're working with Delphonte.
It's just good because, first off, just getting back out there again, moving, I was so ready for that. And then once that happened, you know, I just knew, like, he knew like he know me. Like me and Devontae been working since from like 3-4 years ago. So he just know he know the in and outs, and he know how to he know when I'm hurting, or he know how to pick it up, and he just know how to talk to me when I'm out there. So he give me a lot of motivation for sure.
And the other thing too, just talking about the ins and outs and all that. I don't know if he was talking about route running or just the ins and outs of life. I think it was Delfonte that told Mechie or told Tank, just God was telling you something. Stay out of Florida. Which is great advice. Like, just in terms of, dicey things happen in Florida. This isn't every time I say that, people all of a sudden, because everybody's so hammered with everything. That's not like a COVID take or anything like that. No, just Florida in general. I lived there for many years. Dicey things happen in Florida. Just stay the hell out of Florida.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. We'll go watch after take some of the questions, then we'll go watch some of the DeMeco stuff. Hold on a second. I'm gonna, for all my normal technical difficulties trying to figure out how to do things, I'm just gonna blame CloudStrike today. And I have not actually read the news other than a quick synopsis of what CloudStrike is. So if anything else has been discovered along the way and that it actually was a secret ops type of thing or something, or a black ops thing, then let me know. All right. No. There we go. Mechie's name. Okay. Oh yeah. So as far as Mechie with the ins and outs, Mechie, yes. That is it looks like he's sitting down on a low chair when he's going into his cuts, and in a good way. Like, he just gets low and then explodes out. He looks really, really smooth. And that's where Mechie, he doesn't have blazing top end speed. It's going to be on the route running and everything else. He looks really good. He looks really crisp. I've kind of been trying to look at him and watch and see how much of a difference there is between him and Stephon Diggs in terms of some of the route running stuff. In Mechie, and again, I'm not comparing him directly to the overall player that Stephon Diggs is, but some of the cuts and everything, he looks very, very sharp. He looks way better than any version of him that I can remember seeing. And remember, his rookie year, he was coming off of an ACL, and then who knows? I don't know how long the lymphoma might have been lingering below the surface or what have you. So did I say melanoma? My God, lymphoma. The lymphoma might have been, bubbling up or what have you. So I think in terms of just being healthy, both in his knee and then obviously with overcoming the cancer, he just looks like a different guy. So yeah, very exciting. And he obviously has been working all offseason on forming a relationship with CJ. Yeah, is Mechie going to be wide receiver 3 after Diggs leaves? There's competition, man. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson has looked good out there too. I don't think Xavier. I think that was my evaluation of guys that aren't physical enough in training camp. Florida man is a thing for a reason. Yeah, Florida man was out there way, way, way before COVID. It is not a COVID thing. Yeah, as folks are moving here, he had mentioned that. And Patty, I don't know if you're on or not, but I met his parents today, and they were delightful, absolutely delightful. I just had a very brief conversation with them. But it was cool to see. The fun thing with Tank is that, for a kid, and I can appreciate this and empathize with it because it was an experience I went through, was that, you're not highly recruited out of high school. Tank transfers and then gets to go to a school that was on its way to becoming a Big 12 school and got to become a star at University of Houston. But he didn't have the easiest, straightest path to it. And all of it, in talking to his parents, and honestly, this is the same way I felt when I met CJ's mom last year, though, too. And he played at Ohio State. The parents are just so excited to see their kids out there playing in the NFL. It's really cool. You can put yourself in the parents' shoes. It's just everything that their kid has dreamed of doing, or that you might have hoped for your kid and everything. They're out there with the chance to do it. And it's really cool to see. And Tank's 2 years into it. There's just a level of enthusiasm. It's good to see the parents out there too. It always reminds me to try to keep it as civil as possible when you're criticizing players. The way I always try to look at it is, when I criticize somebody from the Texans, if it's somebody from other NFL team, that guy can go die. I don't care. The other guys, I'll treat them like crap. If I'm talking about an opponent, I don't give a damn. But when it comes to like guys on the Texans or guys on the Astros or anywhere else, like I try to treat it like I'm a coach talking about how a guy needs to improve. And that, because for one, selfishly, I've been so wrong before on being pessimistic about guys, and then they surpass my expectations that I just try not to be all that pessimistic about guys anymore and just keep it open that they might improve. But then also it's rare that there's a guy that's like, it's rare that there's a guy that's just worthless. It's just, he's got to do some things better. And then with Tank, I don't have to talk about much at all other than he might not have to, just don't get hurt on goal line. That's all I ask. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. I admire Tank just because of his path to the NFL. He has a lot of resiliency. Yep. Let's do DeMeco, because I didn't do DeMeco yesterday. The fun thing about these press conferences, everybody, I've noticed, is that because it's been like 80 degrees and cloudy out there, it's the guys don't look like they're dreading the interviews. They don't have that look in their eyes like, all right, let's do this. Ask me your stupid questions. They look like they're having a good time. And it's no pads yet. All right, let's see. Let's go to. There we go. DeMeco Ryans, head coach of the Houston Texans. So DeMeco himself.
Still morning. Oh, feels like afternoon. Fire away.
He's happy.
What did you see an extension of the things you were trying to impart, the teachings that you want to pass on to the whole defense?
Okay, something about an extension of what he wants to impart and pass on to the whole defense.
Adding Aziz to our team.
It's about Aziz Al-Shire.
Has been really valuable. His experience, the way he communicates, the way the leadership that he brings when it comes to bringing guys together. That's what Aziz does, and he's also a tremendous player, physical player. Plays the style of ball that I think the way the game should be played. He exhibits that every single snap. So I'm excited to see him to continue to grow and continue to build the relationships here in Houston.
Yeah, and I don't feel bashful about saying Aziz in a lot of ways reminds me of DeMeco Ryans as a player, in that, DeMeco was he was a really good NFL player. He wasn't all pro. He wasn't incredibly athletic. He wasn't like a Fred Warner type or anything like that, but he gave you every single ounce of his talent, and it was really cool. I remember his rookie year. Remember Kylie Wong had that just brutal injury in 2005. And Kylie was a linebacker in those first few years with the Texans who was like sideline to sideline and just always making plays all over the place. And I remember one day I was just talking to my wife, and she's like, "Yeah, boy, DeMeco, he's like every time I expect Kylie to make one of his plays, DeMeco gets there first. He's just crazy." He's like, my wife loves guys like DeMeco, Will Anderson. She's a coach, so she recognizes it immediately. Like when and it's funny, like the guys that I single out that are my favorites, she almost always says it to me before I say it to her. She's like, "Who's that? Who's that DeMeco? What, that Will Anderson? He plays his ass off." So Brandy told me that, and then I don't know why, but Kylie, coming back from this injury, just a grueling injury where he basically tore every ligament in his knee. One day he and I were just in doing rehab together, and I relayed the story that Brandy had told me to Kylie. And Kylie was, "Thanks, Seth. It's really, really appreciate that. I mean, I know and I see it, but I don't need to hear it." So lesson learned. We're still good friends.
What goes into a decision to use guys from the offense, maybe like Tank Dell, or special teams, and how do you guys kind of navigate something like that?
Okay, so what goes into the decision to use guys like Tank Dell on special teams? For those of you who are just joining or haven't read about it, Tank Dell was out there for punt return drills 2 days ago, and he was out there as a kickoff returner today. But the kickoff return rules are so crazy, and the play is going to be so different and new that they're trying out running backs back there. Dameon Pierce and Jawar Jordan were taking reps. They're trying receivers. Nico is taking reps as a kickoff returner today. Defensive backs, like all the like every type and variety of guy they're going to try. And I think the cool thing will be that they're going to have different plays. These are going to be like more like they're almost going to be more like a play from scrimmage than a kickoff return as you know it. And because of that, I think they'll have a lot of different packages or different plays in any given week for a guy, as long as he can actually feel the kick. Because the kicks are squibbly and everything all over. The kick, they're not just. It's going to be cool. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a lot of directional kicking.
And with the new kickoff rule, you'll see a lot of teams using many more skill players at the return position because you're gonna be able to return the ball and it's gonna hit pretty quick. So I think as many guys as you can get who can catch the ball back there returning, whether it's receivers or running backs, like we're gonna try to use all of our guys to see who is best at really creating explosive plays, because that's what I think will happen on that play.
Okay, so everything I said, I guess I could have just let DeMeco himself tell you.
Coach, when you get players here that may have had a reputation of, not being a good player, from the outside looking in, when you get them in here, they have a clean slate. How do you start to evaluate them?
So when you get a player in who's got a reputation of just not being a good player, what have you, how do you evaluate them?
I evaluate players no matter where they come from, no matter if they're rookies or they come from other teams. Everybody starts fresh with me. And it's all about building a relationship and getting to know that person. Everyone has an opinion about someone maybe that hasn't been here or we don't know that well, and that's okay. I don't lean and I don't believe in other people's opinion about someone. I truly believe and value the relationships that I'm able to build with guys, and that's all that matters to me. Like right here today, the past is the past. Like we're moving on. We're attacking the present with a positive mindset, and everybody has a clean slate. No baggage comes to Houston with you.
Yeah, two things about that. One is, I think Nick Caserio and DeMeco really are step in lockstep with that concept. That's why Nick talks about just getting guys in the building, because you might have your evaluation, but you can't be married to that evaluation. You got to get the guy in the building, and then you got to see how he responds to this environment with these players and this scheme and all of that. And I think honestly, the Astros have been the epitome of a team that, they do their evaluations, and Luno was, great at bringing talent in. But even since Luno and with everybody from Latin America, with the pitchers or anything like that, like they don't look at a guy like the Astros don't look at a Latin American pitcher who's 20 years old and think, oh, he's over the hill. Nope. We think about the arrogance that it takes that these Major League Baseball teams would think that they knew exactly what a guy was by the time he was like 17 years old. Like, honestly, think of the arrogance that it takes. So with just a dose of humility in your evaluation and understanding that, all right, maybe I don't know. We'll see if this guy, he's got some traits. We like him. But likewise, if you draft a guy, you can't be married to your evaluation of him. And I think that's where Nick's humility comes in, is that you can understand that just, all right, maybe I thought that this guy could do something. It didn't work out. Okay, we'll move on. And that's where I think Nick, having been a coach, a position coach as well, might help out too, because he's seen the player development side of things.
Much deeper wide receiver than we had previously. Some guys might not be here that were here last year. I guess what are your messages to the wide receivers as they try to compete for a roster spot, especially the back end?
What's your message to wide receivers as they compete for a roster spot?
And when it comes to my message to our entire team, when it comes to competing, right, I reminded the guys of this yesterday that never forget that training camp, right, it is all about competition. Nobody is guaranteed a spot on the team. Everybody has to work for it, and that's what I truly believe. When you work for something, it means more, right? And you really earn what you get. So we got a lot of really talented players who are giving their best to compete, and whether guys make our team or not, I want our guys to make the NFL, and I want our guys to be able to support their families doing what they love doing.
What are some of the things you're looking for your offensive line before they get into the pads?
Okay, so what are you looking for from the offensive line before they get into the pads?
From our offensive line, during these first 2 days, I've already seen growth from last year. Just the continuity of how these guys are working together, how they're moving off the ball much faster. I think Coach Strasser has done a great job of getting the guys going, and they're playing like a complete unit already in the first 2 days. So I'm excited to continue to see the growth that they have, and I'm just expecting them to come out and give their best every single day, and their best will be good enough for us.
Okay, so that you know what? I'm glad he said that, because I think that's valid. In watching the offensive line, especially in the run plays, I went back and I watched some of the old Arian Foster plays, when they had a bunch of really good offensive linemen. But remember, a lot of those offensive linemen were not guys who were highly touted. They weren't all Dwayne Browns who were first-round draft picks. They're Chris Myers, they were Wade Smith. They were guys that, Winston was not a top pick. But when you watch those guys, it was tough, man, over these last few years. And even in last year, too, in the run game, you'd watch those offensive lines in front of Arian, and it was like they were choreographed. Like everything was in lockstep. Everybody was taking the exact right step at the exact right time. They were passing off defensive linemen, working up to the linebackers with the right timing and the right rhythm. And in this offense, there's a lot of rhythm to it. Like there's a rhythm to playing running back. There's a rhythm to the offensive line and knowing exactly when, like if you're the guard, that center is going to take over the defensive tackle so you can work up to the linebacker. And it takes time. Every Kyle Shanahan offense, like through the years, gets better at running the ball in the second year, because it's reps.
About Diggs being a leader,
And they don't. So my point being, this year, the offensive line and the run plays, even though it's in no pads, they look much more in lockstep than they did this time last year, especially. So that's definitive improvement. I think they look like a more cohesive unit at this point than they did this time last year.
A lot of guys you brought in, the big captains and leaders. You've gone from being here to going to Philly, and they talk about you being kind of a leader. How do you earn that? How is that something that is it kind of just organic? How does that happen?
So that's Landry Locker from the locker room asking about, just how did he become the leader that he is?
Yeah, I don't think I'm kind of a leader. I've always been in that leadership position. It's just always been important.
Is that the most we've ever seen? I mean, did he just jovially bow up a little bit? I like it.
To me, as I mentioned yesterday, to help others around me. I was always tasked with, I don't know how it happened this way, but I was always tasked with playing with younger guys, whether it was, Zach Downs, Brian Cushion, Michael Kendricks, Jordan Hicks. I always had a younger guy next to me, and it always meant something to me to impart some type of wisdom into that young man to help him further his career, because I had veterans when I was here, Sean Barber, Danny Clark, Moreland Greenwood, guys who really helped me when I was a rookie. So that's what the NFL is all about. It's about, we stand on the backs of the guys who came before us. And that's why we've seen this game continue to grow. And it's where it is today, is because of all the men who sacrificed and came before us. And it's our job to continue to pay it forward. And that's what I expect out of all our veterans, right? You continue to pay it forward to the young guys, and that's how the league continues to thrive.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned Danny Clark, because Danny Clark was here when DeMeco was young. I was on the Jaguars when Danny Clark was a rookie, and we talk about players getting better and developing and not writing them off. Danny Clark was constantly in his position coach's doghouse as a rookie, and he had a hard time staying awake in meetings. It was just, he was and he was a good kid. It was just weird. Like it just wasn't clicking for him. And then he ended up, they diagnosed him with sleep apnea. He got it corrected, and he was like a different dude. And he had an old school guy. He'd gone to the Naval Academy. I think he was I think he might have been a Vietnam veteran. Like he was an old school football coach who just rode like Danny into the ground. And Danny got his sleep apnea corrected, and he ended up having a long and productive career. He was a leader on that Giants team that won the 2006 Super Bowl. Awesome dude, by the way, as well. Yeah, that's in Moreland Greenwood. I forgot about him.
Going from Houston to Philly and doing that, not like Diggs walks into the locker room, he's automatically looked at it as a leader. Is there something like, do you look Do you look into that before? Is it just the presence, getting to know the guys? How's that?
When you go from one team to another team, the NFL is a tight community. So everybody knows everybody around the league. And even so nowadays, a lot of guys are training together from different teams. They're training together in the off season. So
I don't like it. I like guys that hate each other.
Everybody knows everyone, and everybody understands the reputation the guys have and the type of player they are. When you're a great player, you instantly have that respect when you step into any locker room around the NFL.
Yeah, it is all true what he's saying. The agents get these guys together on their little powwows too. I never remember there being so much fraternity amongst guys who have the same agent. I don't like that either. Hatred, DeMeco. Next time I talk to DeMeco, I'm going to say he needs to hold more hate in his heart. He'll hear me out.
A few more guys. CJ mentioned how going to year 2, he wanted to own more of the offensive operation. How have you seen him grow in that department?
I've seen CJ grow in handling the offense, just in his command of the huddle, command of his communication. Like it's been really great to see, like seeing from where we started last year to where we are today and what we're able to do on day 2 offensively. There's no way we would have been able to do that last year at this time, but it's because of CJ's growth and how he's taken control and taken command that's allowed us to really be way more advanced than we were in last year.
You go back to that Ravens game. That Ravens game, Slowick tried to do too much. He said as much. He admitted to it. He did too much. I think part of it was probably he was probably really excited and impressed by CJ Stroud, but CJ had only just a week earlier found out that he was even going to be the starter, and he was still learning about the NFL. And I mean, they had multiple guys in motion. The playbook was probably expanded way too far for where it was. And they pulled back a little bit, and obviously the results were really good. But like now, the game plan that was too much in week 1 last year would be primitive by what CJ's capable of now, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Can you talk about year 2 not year 2, but 2 days in, off season for Kenyon Green, what you've seen so far?
Yeah.
So what have you seen from Kenyon Green so far?
With Kenyon, with the first 2 days, what I've seen a guy who's in shape and a guy who's ready to compete. And that's going to give him his best chance to put his best film out there, and we'll see. But Kenyon, he's available. So that's going to allow him to continue to grow and become a better player because he's done a great job in the offseason of working out, being attentive to all the details that the coaches have asked him to, take care of. He's been on it. And so it just gives him a chance, right? And Kenyon has the right mindset. He's working hard. He's working the proper way. So I'm excited to see how he continues to grow once we get pads on, once we play in games.
He does look really athletic. He looks way more athletic than he did as a rookie. And he was a guy who's just kind of a mauler. He'd rather wrestle somebody to the ground in college than win with his feet. And my question with young guys always, with guys who are maulers like that, you can still be a mauler, but you got to learn to win with your feet more so than winning with your hands and your upper body strength, because there's too many guys in the NFL that you're not going to out muscle. The biggest, strongest dudes in on the offensive line aren't going to consistently out muscle the strongest guys on the defensive line. You got to ultimately be really good with your feet. And he looks way more athletic than he did his rookie year. And now it's just a matter of, like DeMeco said, availability. The best ability is availability.
The Texans are making it easier for fans to get into the stadium earlier. What does it mean to the team when the fans are loud on defense and quiet on offense? And can you tell any stories where you felt it in NRG Stadium?
Thank you for the question. I've gotten that question a lot since I've been in Houston about fans getting to the stadium, early. As we all know, fans, they pump energy into our team, right? We feel it. Our players feel it. Coaches feel it. Everyone feels the energy that our fans bring to the game. So with fans being in early, being loud when we're in the stadium, it's a really unique and really cool atmosphere, especially playing here in NRG Stadium when it's packed and it's loud. I just think back to our playoff game versus the Cleveland Browns here. It's just a special moment just to see how packed the stadium was and what it meant to our players. right? And it just provides them with more juice, more energy to go out and execute their job.
I'll tell you one thing that is, with the crowd noise, a lot of times, obviously, if you can create confusion on the offense, that's awesome. That's awesome. But like as a defensive player, honestly, it's still, I think my favorite thing, of my memories in the NFL were just those times where you've got an offense backed up at home or you're on the goal line and just, especially when you're on the goal line, you're usually, if it's after like a 10-play drive, you're gassed. Like you are just gassed. And there is something about that noise that it's like by osmosis, it seeps into you. And usually like you're at that point where you can barely think because you're so gassed. And just all that noise. And if you can see that the offense is starting to get confused or the quarterback's having a hard time communicating with the offensive line, it does carry you. It's really, really cool. It's like one of the things I'm most grateful for having played in a big time football environment. I didn't get to play big time college football, so that was the only like in the NFL. That was my experience with stuff like that, where there's just a wall of people. It's awesome.
There were two players that we hear from daily. It's one thing to see them on tape, but it's another to get them in the building and get a chance to work with them. What have you kind of seen from both Joe Mixon and DeMeco Hunter since they've been with the Houston Texans?
What are you seeing from Joe Mixon and DeMeco Hunter since they've been with the Texans?
And what I've seen from Joe and DeMeco, I've seen two guys who love to work. They love football. They show up every day ready to compete, giving their best. That's all I ask for guys. And they have a really good teammates, right? Really great teammates. They care about others. You see Joe, he probably got handshakes with everybody on the team. Like you see the bond and connection that he has, and it's cool to see, right? There's two guys who, again, they've been successful in other places. So we're excited to see that success continue here in Houston.
I think with veteran leadership, a lot of times, I think, there's a tendency to think about it in terms of like, okay, what kind of a pep talk can he give, or how can he, get a young guy to work harder, all that. It really only works if you've got multiple dudes, because you've got to have enough guys who are really good role models that it just becomes part of the culture and that it has a cumulative effect, and the worst thing you can do is when you sign a bunch of veterans who are like a bunch of old school or just guys who really savor being a veteran that doesn't have to work hard or doesn't have to do every rep and all that stuff. You got too many of those guys, then the young guys start looking at it like, oh, that's what I'm shooting for. That's my goal in life, is to be the guy that's doesn't work all that hard anymore. Like it's toxic, So you want to get as many guys that are just obsessive with practicing and obsessive about just going hard all the time. And, even though they'll get their vet days at time, just really just working on their own game, and that seeps into everything else. Aside from also the tutelage, obviously, is valuable.
Last season, there's been a lot of talk about the wide receiver position. Of course, I had Stephon Diggs, but what are you looking for from the tight end group to impact this offense?
From our tight ends, I'm looking for even more explosive plays out of our tight end group. I think Dalton did a great job last year of being very consistent, reliable. And we've seen Brevin step up and make some plays, make some explosive plays for us down the field as well. So I'm excited to see Brevin's growth. Brevin's a young player who I think has even more in the tank, and he can be a playmaker for us. So we know what Dalton brings, and we can bring Brevin along, and also excited about the rookie, Cade Stover, to see what he brings. He's a physical guy. He can move around and play multiple spots. So excited to see him in action.
Okay, Brevin Jordan, yes. I think that, again, the hazards of trying to evaluate the entire team after 2 days of no pads practices, I don't remember Brevin Jordan sticking out on anything magnificent on any of the plays that I saw, but I think he looks just fine, and I think so DeMeco's reports on him have been very, very, very positive. I'm excited to see with him with 1 year in this offense, perhaps how they use him now that he's really comfortable with it. So there's that. Cade Stover, I'm really excited to see the pads come on, because Cade's only played tight end for 2 years, and blocking he would tell you is the thing that one of the big things he really needs to work on. It's not so simple to all of a sudden be blocking NFL defensive ends when you've only blocked people for 2 years in your life. So he's going to work at it. Like all the reports on him from CJ or anybody else at Ohio State, he's just like the perfect dude that you want in terms of work ethic and everything. It's just, okay, how long does it take him to figure it out? He's the exact same height and weight as George Kittle. George Kittle's a pretty damn good blocker.
Last one. DeMeco, when you look at the progression of Blake Fisher, what are some things that you've seen just with him going to left tackle when he was primarily at right tackle?
So what have you seen from Blake Fisher? Blake Fisher was taking a lot of reps with the ones with Laramie Tunsil out at left tackle these last couple days. And he's saying transitioning from right tackle. He's played left tackle before, but, he flip-flops.
Yeah, from Blake, I seen a guy he's been, versatile. Right? When you can play left and right tackle, it helps, especially if you're a third tackle. You never know what may happen on game day. As we saw with our offensive line last year, had a lot of guys in a lot of different places. So for Blake, having that versatility of being able to play on the right side and also move over to the left, it's only going to strengthen our offensive line group, is only going to help our team with what he's been able to do.
And I think, Charlie Heck obviously is the guy that is theoretically in competition with Blake Fisher. I think athletically they're different guys. With Charlie, I think there's still an element where I'm kind of waiting to see it kind of click for him, where he goes into full grown man mode. And this would be the year that he really has to make an impression, I think, because obviously he's got a relatively high draft pick that he's competing with.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach. What time do the Astros start? They start at 9, right? Okay. We better wrap this thing up. I'll take a couple more questions or comments or read your wisdom, and then we'll wrap it up in time for the Astros on the damn West Coast. With Hunter no longer being asked to read offenses and just go all out, not think and just play, how successful can he be this year? Danielle Hunter talked about it. I should probably do that press conference tomorrow, maybe. I think he's a guy, I think it was Corey Barrett on Twitter had pointed this out, that, he does not have a really, when you watch him play, he's not always getting across the line of scrimmage as fast as, say, Will Anderson. Part of that, I do think, is that he's got a really good way of disrupting the rhythm of an offensive tackle. And sometimes that's by just giving the offensive lineman time to get into his set and then hitting him on a half beat. But there is a part of it too where, he's been asked to read and react a lot in his career, which means sometimes you're being more passive before you hit your pass rush. In this defense, they really want those defensive ends to just tear off the ball and have as few responsibilities as possible. So I think he could have a very, very good year. I don't think it necessarily means he's going to be better than last year. Like, he was on a defense last year that blitzed a lot, which creates a lot of opportunities. You end up getting matched up against tight ends or running backs at times when you're blitzing all the time. But so statistically, if he has a year that's similar to last year, then that's exactly why you signed him. And I think that's very, very possible. And I'd have to go back and look at the history of Mike Zimmer and everything else. Yeah, this boy, yeah, he's been kind of unleashed in a way. All right. I'll allow myself to get excited about that. Yeah, it could be a different version of Danielle Hunter, and it's like Danielle Hunter's been a pretty good version of, as Danielle Hunters go. Danielle Hunter has been a good one already. If he can be a better Danielle Hunter than the previous Danielle Hunter, that'd be kind of freaky. Like watching Jordan Schultz and Noah Brown last year. Yeah, the more under-heralded ones. It's funny, DeMeco saying a lot of the same stuff O'Brien would say, but it sounds completely different when he says it. Yeah. I think the thing about O'Brien was that O'Brien would say things that he philosophically believed, but that his temperament couldn't accept, I think. I think it's just O'Brien, man, he's just a complicated individual. He's a really intelligent guy, and I think is like very good at heart. He's just got such a temper. And I think there was I think there wasn't the stability there that DeMeco has. Like DeMeco can look at things and take the broad perspective on things and just, okay, let's get a little bit better today. Okay, what are we going to work on? We're going to work on this, get a little bit better today, and not get necessarily as frustrated perhaps as a guy like Bill O'Brien when things don't go well. They're just different people. How good do you think our interior D line will be versus our edge players? I think we've talked about this a good amount earlier. They've got a boatload of really good and genuine competition on the defensive line right now. I think that when it comes to when you really need to stop the run, they've got Fadakasi, they've got Tim Settle is wide. He's a big dude. I didn't appreciate just how big he was until I saw him in person. You got Khalil Davis. Kurt Heinisch is looking more slippery and athletic than I've seen him look. So I think this competition has probably been really good for him. That there's a lot of serious competition there. And then when it comes to the passing downs, DeMeco Autry can rush on the inside. Mario Edwards can rush on the inside. A lot of the other guys, depending on situation, can come down inside. So I don't worry about the pass rush much. It's 1st and 10. It's 2nd and 5. Those plays. Can you get, honestly, I'm not as worried about the run defense as I am when you have those big body dudes in. Can those guys rush the passer well enough? Like if you feel like, okay, well, we got to have our big bodies out there, but you're facing a team that's going to take that opportunity to pass, are you still getting enough push up the middle? I think the run defense is going to be fine. About Justin Simmons, I don't know, Patty. I haven't seen that report. CloudStrike messed up my entire world for about 6 hours this afternoon. I tried to send a fax, like I would say no less than 27 times. And I don't want to blame eFax because they've been good to me. But my God, it was a really important document for a really important thing. And I just had to, I was doing it like at the dentist's office as I was getting my teeth cleaned, trying to get this fax to go through. That's my struggle. Do teams typically want the extra Hall of Fame preseason game? It seems uniquely beneficial for a young team like Houston. Nick yesterday said that he really likes having the opportunity to play a bunch of the younger guys more, and especially now when there's just so few total practices because there's no genuine two-a-days anymore. That I would think that I would think that the GMs and the coaches like it. They just, they want to manage it to be sure guys don't get injured. But Nick especially, he just loves to funnel these guys through so much. Do you agree our good run defense is more scheme than personnel? I don't recall Collins or Rankins being run stoppers. Right. And it's a very good point. And I think they were better against the run than like the PFF grades. Like the PFF had like Sheldon Rankins is basically like the worst defensive tackle in the league for a while. And it didn't really jibe with what I was watching. So yes, I think especially again, the run defense, man, it to me, I don't care about rankings or anything. Like the 49ers last year statistically, they were a really good rush defense. But a lot of that was more based on, all right, well, teams were in a position where they had to pass a lot. So teams really weren't even trying to run all that much. When they got to the playoffs and at the end of the season too, in some critical, like against some tough teams, the 49ers run defense faltered. So for me, it's always when you absolutely have to stop the run, can you stop the run? And I think that's where some of those big body guys come in. The other thing about this defense is because the defensive ends are cocked out wide a lot of times in the base defense, it funnels everything to the inside. So that does put a lot of stress on your defensive tackles, but it really puts stress on your linebackers because those outside linebackers, they've got to handle all that inside run, all that run that's getting funneled to the inside, but they still also got to handle their pass coverage responsibilities. So that's why it's one of the things where that's why linebackers are so key and critical to this style of defense because you've got to have a guy like if you've got a Dre Greenlaw, or if you've got a Fred Warner. A couple of years ago, they had Azeez Al-Shire in San Francisco. Then those guys can handle that. But that's why DeMeco sprinkling his pixie dust on Christian Harris, hopefully, and that continues to improve. For those of you who aren't here, Christian Harris hasn't practiced the last couple days, but just from the people I asked about it, I think it genuinely sounds like no big deal at all. I mean, Christian Harris was doing interviews a day or two before training camp talking about how amped up he was. So I think I have zero clue what it would be, But whether it's a personal matter or maybe damage from barrel or something, I have zero clue. But nobody seems to be all that overly concerned about it or concerned at all about it. I like that PFF chart on it. Pass rush versus run defense by defensive tackles. Okay, yeah, I'll have to go back and look at that. So, if you enjoyed the live stream and I went way longer than I thought I would, please like, subscribe. I'm Seth Payne. I played for the Texans a long time ago, but now I do sports radio on Sports Radio 610 every weekday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Although during training camp we only do a 2-hour show, and then Mark and John Harris do from 8 to 10. But and they're awesome, especially for during camp because they've got inside stuff on all these guys. So thanks everybody. Everybody enjoy the Astros. They should be starting shortly. This thing never ends